Have you ever stumbled upon something so shocking that time itself seemed to freeze? Imagine standing in a bustling restaurant tray in hand only to see your mother's photograph, an old faded snapshot tucked in the wallet of a billionaire customer. The world around you collapses into that single discovery. That was the exact moment everything changed for Aaliyah. Daniels, a dedicated young waitress at an upscale Chicago hotel, little did she know that photograph would unravel decades of secrets, lies, and hidden motives, forever altering her perception of family and fate. Get ready for a story of revelation, heartbreak, and unexpected destiny. Aaliyah Daniels had grown accustomed to the lively hum of Chicago by day and the electric spark of its nightlife. She lived on the South Side in a small, cozy apartment she inherited from her late grandmother. The city's rhythm felt inseparable from her own heartbeat. Every morning she rose with the sun, hopped onto the CTA bus, and embarked on a 1-hour journey to the luxurious Ritz-Carlton Hotel on the magnificent Mile, where she worked as a waitress in their prestigious rooftop restaurant. Their big spenders and tourists combined to create a melting pot of ambition, glamour, and sometimes heartbreak. Aaliyah took great pride in her job, not because it paid extravagantly. It didn't, but because she had the chance to hone her people skills while also sustaining her dream of finishing her business degree at night school. She worked diligently, wearing a polite but genuine smile, always attentive to guests' needs. Yet behind her warm demeanor lingered a persistent question. Why had her mother left her when she was just a child? Growing up, Aaliyah had vague memories and faded pictures of her mother, someone whose face she could only recall from an old photograph on her nightstand, a woman with kind eyes and an air of gentle mystery. Her mother's name was Patrice Daniels, but the name alone meant little when she had so many unanswered questions. At 24, Aaliyah believed she had finally forged her own path, stepping out from the lingering shadow of maternal abandonment, or so she told herself. But every once in a while, in the hush of a quiet morning, or during the stillness of a Chicago night, her heart still whispered that longing question. What if her mother was out there, somewhere watching over her? On a brisk October evening, as the leaves tumbled across Lake Shore Drive, Aaliyah stood at her station in the restaurant, scanning the crowd. She recognized the usual flock of business people in suits, couples celebrating anniversaries, and a few celebrities hoping for a discreet night out. Just as she was about to make her rounds, her manager, Julian West, hurried over Aaliyah. "We've got a VIP in the corner booth near the window," Julian whispered discreetly, nodding toward a handsome older man wearing an impeccably tailored suit. "That's William Hawthorne, the billionaire investor. Word is he's worth more than some small countries," William Hawthorne, Aaliyah repeated, with wide eyes. She had heard the name in news articles and gossip columns. He owned multiple companies in the tech and finance sectors, and rumor had it that his wealth ran so deep he could have bought entire neighborhoods in Chicago if he wanted to. A certain mystique clung to his name, fueled by the press's relentless speculation about his personal life and past relationships. Julian placed a gentle hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "Make sure he has everything he needs. The best service. And keep your composure." Aaliyah nodded. She already prided herself on her calm, polite demeanor, but tonight she felt her nerves tingle. There was a certain aura around powerful figures like Hawthorne. In her mind, it was similar to walking past a lion in a cage, captivating and frightening in equal measure. She smoothed her uniform, took a deep breath, and headed to Mr. Hawthorne's booth. He was seated alone, staring out over the shimmering city lights. The restaurant's design made the skyline look like it was at the tip of one's fingers, a perfect vantage point for a man used to feeling like the world was at his command. "Good evening, Mr. Hawthorne. My name is Aaliyah, and I'll be your waitress tonight." She introduced herself, smiling politely. "Might I start you off with a drink?" William turned his intense, steel-grey eyes on her. Aaliyah noticed flecks of gold in them, both mesmerizing and slightly intimidating. He offered a small smile that seemed practiced. "Of course," he said quietly, his voice carrying a soft rasp. "I'll have a scotch on the rocks." "Certainly," Aaliyah replied. "Would you care for our specials tonight? The chef recommends our pan-seared salmon or filet mignon with a red wine reduction." William considered. "Let's go with the filet." "Right away, sir." Before Aaliyah retreated to place the order, William's gaze lingered on her for a moment. She sensed a flicker of surprise in his eyes, as though she reminded him of someone. Then it was gone, replaced by the calm mask of a man in control of his emotions. She turned to walk away, but couldn't shake the feeling that there had been a charge in the air, a subtle but powerful energy radiating from that corner booth. The night progressed smoothly. Aaliyah continued to attend to William's table, replenishing his drink and ensuring his meal arrived at just the right temperature. After dessert, an elegant chocolate torte, he politely declined coffee. Then he signaled for the check. Aaliyah walked over, placed the small black folder on the table, and discreetly stepped back, giving him time to review it. A moment later, William pulled out his wallet. And that was when the chain of events began, events that would forever change Aaliyah's life. As he retrieved a sleek platinum credit card, a small photograph fluttered out of the wallet. It spun in the air like a lost leaf before landing face up on the tabletop. Aaliyah's eyes flickered down to the photo. Instantly, her heart jammed in her throat. The image showed a woman with a soft smile, dressed in a simple blouse. She had the same warm brown eyes, the same radiant glow that Aaliyah had stared at countless nights in her old photo at home. It was her mother, Patrice Daniels. She stood there stunned, her face drained of color. The restaurant seemed to blur around her. The chatter of diners, the clink of silverware, and even the city lights receded into the background. A burst of confusion, anger, and heartbreak tore through her. Why did William Hawthorne, a billionaire she'd never met before, have a picture of her mother? William frowned, picking up the photo. "Careful," he murmured. But Aaliyah couldn't stifle her gasp. Her eyes were locked on the photograph as if it were a living, breathing entity. Adrenaline surged through her veins. William noticed her reaction. "Are you all right?" he asked, arching an eyebrow. Aaliyah's mind spun wildly. "Do I say something? Demand an explanation? Confront a man known for his cold composure and nearly unlimited power?" The swirl of emotions overrode her professional instincts. That photo, she breathed, voice trembling. "That's my mother." Silence collapsed between them. William's mouth tightened, and for a split second, his eyes flickered with something that looked like recognition. Or was it guilt? He carefully placed the photo back into his wallet, slipping the credit card onto the bill. "I believe there's been some misunderstanding," he said quietly, though she could see his knuckles whiten around the black folder. Aaliyah's tears threatened to spill, but she held them back with sheer willpower. "That's definitely my mother," she insisted, barely above a whisper. Her name was Patrice Daniels. "Why do you have her picture?" William's jaw clenched. "I'm sorry, maybe we should discuss this in private." His answer was enough for Aaliyah to gather that this wasn't some random, mistaken identity. He recognized the name. He knew exactly who Patrice was. Dread crept up Aaliyah's spine as she nodded her mind, spinning with countless questions. At that moment, she realized that everything she thought she knew about her past was about to be redefined or destroyed minutes later. Julian, the manager, noticed the tension and gestured for Aaliyah to take a short break. William Hawthorne, having signed his bill with the smallest flourish of a pen, slid out of the booth, leaving a generous tip behind. He gave Julian a nod and quietly said, "I'd like to speak with Aaliyah in the lounge area, if it's permissible." Julian, though puzzled, signaled an okay, and soon enough, Aaliyah found herself following William through a discreet door that led to a small private lounge reserved for VIP guests. The plush leather chairs and soft ambient lighting did little to soothe the knot tightening in her stomach. William gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing. "Only have 15 minutes for my break," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though fear and anticipation made her thoughts race. "Please tell me how you know my mother," he sighed, running a hand through his neatly groomed salt and pepper hair. It was the first moment he appeared truly unsettled. "I met Patrice many years ago before you were born," he began softly. "We were involved in a complicated situation." Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean, complicated?" she demanded. Did you abandon her? Did she?" She stopped the words, too painful to articulate. Her mind was conjuring images of heartbreak, betrayal, or perhaps something worse. William took a seat, crossing his long legs, trying to maintain an air of composure. Patrice was a remarkable woman, driven, intelligent, creative. We met at a fundraiser in New York. At that time, I was not the man you see before you. Today, I was fresh out of graduate school, nursing grand ambitions. Patrice had her own dreams. She aspired to become a fashion designer. We connected immediately. Aaliyah fought the urge to scoff. "That still doesn't explain why you have her photo, or why she never mentioned you to me." He shook his head. "I realize it's difficult to process all this at once. I kept Patrice's photo because she left a profound impact on my life. But our relationship was overshadowed by certain family issues on my end." She frowned. "Family issues." William exhaled a shaky breath. "My parents disapproved of our relationship. My father, in particular. He was a ruthless investor who believed in a rigid social hierarchy. He couldn't imagine me building a life with someone who didn't fit into his narrow view of what a suitable partner looked like." His voice caught for a moment, and Aaliyah wondered if that was genuine regret shining in his eyes, or just a well-practiced act. "Patrice and I parted ways under great duress. I lost contact with her, but I kept this photo," he explained, tapping his wallet as a reminder of my mistakes. Tremors of anger and curiosity coursed through Aaliyah. "You say you lost contact, but she disappeared from my life too. She left when I was 5. Did your father have something to do with it?" "Did you?" William looked away. "I don't know what happened after Patrice went back to Chicago. I swear I've spent years trying to locate her with little success. Tonight, I never expected to encounter her daughter." He paused. "Does she still live in Chicago? I'd like to see her." Aaliyah felt tears sting the back of her eyes, remembering the quiet heartbreak she endured as a child, the endless nights peering out her bedroom window, hoping to see her mother returning down the road. She struggled to say the words. She died when I was 13. Aaliyah managed a single tear sliding down her cheek. "A car accident. I was living with my grandmother at the time." Shock flashed across William's face. He leaned forward, burying his face in his hands for a moment. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, voice unsteady. I had no idea. For a moment, Aaliyah felt a flicker of empathy. Grief recognized grief, but the resentment she'd harbored all her life refused to let him off so easily. If you didn't have any idea why, carry her photo around. If you cared so much, why didn't you try harder to find her? You're William Hawthorne. You have endless resources. Private investigators if you wish money to open any door. How could you not find her? He swallowed hard, struggling to maintain his composure. I did hire investigators. For years I did. The only trace of Patrice was that she had left New York and possibly traveled. There was misinformation and dead ends. I was consumed by my father's business. All I have to show for my failure is this photo. Aaliyah's mind spun. The sense of betrayal she felt toward both her mother for vanishing and toward the father who might never have known she existed twisted her insides. You could be lying, she said, unsure of her own words. You might just be using a smooth story to cover your tracks. Or maybe there was something else. William raised his head and looked her square in the eye. I'm telling you the truth as I know it. He paused, clenching his jaw. But now something else is pressing on my mind. Aaliyah, how old are you? She bristled. I'm 24. He inhaled slowly, nodding. Then Patrice would have been pregnant shortly after we parted. Is that correct? Aaliyah's stomach dropped. The implication hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Was William Hawthorne insinuating that he was her father? The possibility shattered all semblance of calm left in her world. She bit her lip, her voice breaking. I have no idea who my father is. My mother never mentioned him. William glanced at the door, making sure no one was listening. I'm not sure either. He admitted quietly. But I suspect that I could be your father. It is possible. A flash of rage ignited in Aaliyah's eyes. You walk into my life with your billions and your sorrowful confessions, and now you're telling me you think you might be my father. This is insane. Her voice rose with every word, but she forced it back to a near whisper, aware that she was on the clock at a job she couldn't afford to lose. William clasped his hands together. If there's a test you'd be willing to undergo a paternity test, I would do it immediately, whatever it takes to find the truth. Aaliyah couldn't think clearly. The lounge felt suffocating, the walls too close. She glanced at the clock. She was already over her 15-minute break. I have to get back to work, she stammered. We'll talk about this later. Without waiting for his response, she bolted from the lounge, tears stinging her eyes. A million questions clawed at her mind. Could the man who abandoned her mother be the key to the father she never knew? Or was she on the brink of another heartbreak about to be pulled into a labyrinth of secrets and deceit? That night after her shift ended, Aaliyah walked home through the chilly Chicago streets, her thoughts spinning like a carousel gone rogue. She reached her small apartment and stumbled inside, flicking on the single lamp in her living room. The apartment was modest. A second-hand couch, a small wooden table, walls adorned with posters of her favorite jazz musicians. Yet it was her sanctuary. Normally being here offered solace. Not tonight. She pulled out the battered shoebox she kept in her closet. Inside were the mementos she had of her mother, a lipstick-stained handkerchief, a couple of costume jewelry pieces, and that same photograph of Patrice standing in front of the Chicago skyline. Aaliyah stared at it. Was it possible that the man in the next photo, taken at some random gathering, or the man behind her mother's camera lens, was William Hawthorne? She traced her mother's face with a trembling finger. Patrice had indeed been a dreamer, someone who believed she could ascend from poverty to success. by her own design, but life had dealt her a cruel hand. Without Aaliyah's father present, Patrice struggled financially. She'd hopped between waitressing jobs, housekeeping gigs, and occasional seamstress work. Yet there had always been that spark in her mother's eyes, a hint of bigger dreams. Then one day, she vanished, leaving Aaliyah with a 2-line note about pursuing opportunities and a promise to come back for her soon. That day never came. Aaliyah placed the photo beside her mother's half-finished diary. She flipped through the pages, scanning the entries for any mention of a William. A short passage caught her eye. I wish he understood. I never wanted his money. I only wanted him to choose love over prestige. But his father won. Now I must decide what's best for me. And Aaliyah's heart thumped. The passage ended abruptly, as though Patrice had been interrupted mid-thought. Yet it seemed to confirm that Patrice had been forced to part ways with a man whose family disapproved. Was that him, truly William, or someone else entirely? And what about the reference to what's best for me? And who could it be? Aaliyah, or perhaps a second child, or an entirely different matter? Every question sparked another, intensifying the ache in Aaliyah's chest. She closed the diary carefully and made up her mind. She had to see William again. But on her terms, if there was the slightest chance he was her father. She needed to know, and if he turned out to be just another man with illusions or manipulative agendas, then she needed to expose him. The next morning, Aaliyah called in sick, a rare move for her. She found William Hawthorne's business card among the scraps of paper in her apron pocket. He had pressed it into her hand before leaving the restaurant, instructing her to call if she wanted to continue their conversation. She held the crisp card with trembling fingers. Engraved in gold letters was William Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Innovations Group, with a direct phone number. Swallowing a wave of nervousness, Aaliyah dialed. Each ring felt like a drumbeat of anticipation. Finally, a polite, crisp voice answered Hawthorne Innovations Group, Mr. Hawthorne's office. Aaliyah cleared her throat. May I speak to Mr. Hawthorne? Please, it's personal. May I have your name? The assistant inquired. Tell him it's Aaliyah Daniels. She waited, her heart pounding, as she heard faint, muffled words on the other end. Moments later, William's calm, measured voice came through the line. Aaliyah, good morning, she steadied herself. Good morning, I need to see you. To talk properly, without the constraints of my shift. William paused. Of course, I'm available this afternoon at my office if you'd like, or I can meet you somewhere more comfortable. Your office is fine, she replied, wanting to maintain a sense of control. Meeting on his turf was risky, but she refused to let him overshadow her own narrative. I'll be there at 2. After hanging up, Aaliyah spent the morning pacing her apartment. She told herself she'd go in with a clear head, ask for a paternity test, and keep him at arm's length until the truth was confirmed. A small voice in her heart, however, admitted she longed for closure, and maybe the chance of having a father figure, no matter how belated. At 1:45 p.m., she arrived at Hawthorne Innovations Group, a skyscraper perched in Chicago's downtown, shimmering with steel and glass. The lobby was an emblem of quiet wealth, marble floors, modern sculptures, and an imposing security desk. Aaliyah approached the receptionist, who politely directed her to the 48th floor. Her stomach churned with nerves during the elevator ride up. She had never been this high in a building that wasn't part of the hotel complex. The elevator doors opened to reveal a spacious reception area. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a living painting. A tall, perfectly composed assistant greeted her. Miss Daniels, right this way. Mr. Hawthorne is expecting you. She was ushered into a corner office that had sweeping views of Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline. William stood by the window, looking out. His suit was a subtle charcoal, his tie muted. There was something almost sorrowful in his posture. "Thank you, Tess," he said to his assistant, who retreated, shutting the door behind her. Aaliyah advanced into the room, her fists balled at her sides, her heart pounding. "This is where you run your empire, I suppose?" William offered a half-smile. "This is one of many offices. But yes, it's home base." He gestured to a chair opposite his grand mahogany desk. "Please sit." She obliged, lowering herself onto the plush leather seat perched at its edge. So she began, eyes locked on his. "Let's discuss the possibility that you're my father." His gaze flickered. "I want a paternity test as much as you do," he said carefully. "If it's true, I want to do right by you." Aaliyah let out a bitter laugh. "Right by me, after almost a quarter-century." "Forgive me for being skeptical," William nodded, acknowledging her retort. "You have every right to feel that way. I won't push you to accept me. But if the test proves we share a bond, then I will do anything in my power to make amends." The sincerity in his voice rattled her. Was he playing a game or truly earnest? "Fine," she muttered. "I'll schedule a test at a lab I trust. We can figure out the details. But I have questions. If you're so wealthy, why didn't you break free from your father's control? And if you suspect you might have a child out there, you don't just give up the search." William walked over to his desk, leaning against it. "My father. Winston Hawthorne was a deeply controlling man. When I say controlling, I mean it was borderline tyranny. He had me in a stranglehold financially. Psychologically, I was an only son groomed to follow in his footsteps. Even after his death, I carried the guilt that I never stood up to him in time to be with Patrice." He paused, swallowing. "As for not finding you, I have no real excuse except repeated failures and perhaps my own cowardice. But once I learned from you that Patrice passed away, a puzzle piece snapped into place. That might explain why my investigators found no trace after a certain point." His candor startled her. She had expected more evasion. Instead, he bore the expression of a regretful man. She also recalled the mention of Winston Hawthorne in the Chicago Tribune years ago, an obituary that described him as formidable, philanthropic, and controversial. Could that be the father who forced William to sacrifice love for the sake of legacy? A tense silence settled. Aaliyah shifted in her seat. "Let's say the test is conclusive," she said, voice subdued. "What then? Do you think you can just buy me a mansion or a sports car to patch up decades of abandonment?" A flicker of hurt crossed William's features. "No, I don't assume money will fix anything. If you're my daughter, I want the chance to know you, to support your dreams if that's something you'd even allow." He took a deep breath. "I understand your resentment, but I am prepared to do whatever it takes." Aaliyah felt the heat of tears threatening again, but she blinked them away. "It's all too sudden," she admitted softly. "I'm not sure how I feel. When the test results come back, we'll talk again." William nodded, pressing his lips together. "Fair enough. I'll have my assistant coordinate with you for the tests. And please, if you need anything." She stood abruptly, unable to handle the swirling emotions any longer. "I only need the truth," she said, choking back the lump in her throat. Without another word, she headed for the door, leaving William Hawthorne looking wounded in his magnificent glass tower. While waiting for the paternity test results, Aaliyah buried herself in work. But her mind kept drifting to her mother's past. At home, she pored over Patrice's old diaries and mementos, searching for clues. Among the entries were vague references to a powerful family, and a love she was forced to leave behind. Then tucked in a locked tin her grandmother once guarded, Aaliyah found a letter that made her heart stop. "I'm leaving Aaliyah with you for now. William is the father, but his father threatened to ruin me. If William truly loves me, he'll fight. If not, I'll let go. I'll come back for my baby." Tears streamed down Aaliyah's face. The letter confirmed everything her mother had loved. William and Winston Hawthorne had torn them apart. Now, with proof in hand and the test results pending, Aaliyah knew one thing for sure: she needed answers and closure. A week later, Aaliyah received a call from the clinic. Her chest tightened as the nurse informed her that the test results were in, and both parties had been notified. She could pick up her copy at her earliest convenience. Nerves on edge. Aaliyah hurried over to the clinic after her shift. She signed in at the front desk and was handed a sealed envelope. It felt like she was holding her entire future in a single piece of paper. She slipped into a quiet corner of the waiting area, her eyes locked on the envelope. After a few shaky breaths, she tore it open. Her eyes scanned the page, searching for the one line that would change everything. Then she saw it: probability of paternity. 9%. For a second, her vision blurred. Then reality set in. William Hawthorne was her father, and there was no doubt about it. Aaliyah stumbled outside the crisp Chicago air, whipping her face. She leaned against a brick wall for support, the letter clutched in her hand. She felt a flood of emotions, from profound relief at having a definitive answer to a soul-deep anguish for all the lost years. William had texted her earlier, requesting to meet as soon as the results were in. She texted back, "I have the results. Where should we meet?" His reply was immediate. "My office is available, or we can meet anywhere you feel comfortable." Aaliyah mulled it over, then typed, "Meet me at Grant Park near the Buckingham Fountain, tomorrow at 10 a.m. She chose an outdoor setting to avoid the imposing nature of his corporate domain. She needed airspace and a sense of her own territory. Early the next morning, Aaliyah arrived at Grant Park. The weather was chilly, with a weak sun attempting to break through the grey autumn clouds. She found a bench near Buckingham Fountain, one of Chicago's iconic landmarks. The fountain's majestic jets of water sparkled in the daylight, but Aaliyah's gaze was distant, her mind racing right on time. William approached, wearing a tailored black coat. He smiled tentatively, though the tension in his posture was evident. She motioned for him to sit beside her. They sat quietly for a moment, the roar of the fountain filling the silence. At last, Aaliyah spoke, her voice shaky. "The results confirm it. You're my father." William inhaled slowly, his eyes filled with an odd mix of awe and sorrow. "I see," he whispered. "So it's certain, yes?" She replied, extending the letter she found in her grandmother's tin, "And this clarifies things." He carefully took the worn paper, reading Patrice's words about Winston Hawthorne's threats and her hope for their future. A pained grimace took hold of William's features. He handed it back gently. "Everything I feared. My father must have threatened her in ways I never even knew." He looked at Aaliyah, tears shimmering in his eyes. "Aaliyah, I failed both of you. I'm sorry. It seems so inadequate, but I truly am." Aaliyah clenched her jaw. "Why didn't you fight for her, for us?" She gazed at him, letting her anger simmer to the surface. "You had resources, intelligence, ambition. Why let your father control you like that?" William stared out at the fountain. "I was a coward," he admitted in a ragged voice. Growing up under Winston Hawthorne was like living in a fortress. Any attempts to break free were quashed. When Patrice left, I tried to find her, but not with the determination I should have. I gave in to pressure, telling myself I had no real power to stand against my father. It's my greatest regret. Aaliyah felt the sting of tears, but forced herself to maintain her composure. My mother died believing you chose your father over her. That's the legacy you gave her. All these years I've resented not knowing my father, but here you are, unbelievably wealthy, living a life of status. She shook her head, voice trembling. Do you have any idea what I've been through? William's eyes brimmed with remorse. I can't change the past, he said, voice cracking. But I can be here now. I can try to support you emotionally, financially, whatever you need. She let out a bitter laugh, echoing across the fountain's basin. I'm not looking for handouts. What I need is to know my father is more than a spineless figure who hid behind his father's shadow, his head bowed. I understand. I have to earn your trust, even if you never fully forgive me. I want to do what's right. I want to be in your life, if you'll let me. Aaliyah took a moment to steady her breathing. The swirl of emotions threatened to overwhelm her, but a fragment of empathy softened her stance. She remembered how her mother had described William as caring and idealistic before Winston's interference. Maybe that man still existed beneath the layers of guilt and missed opportunity. I won't cut you off, she said at last, though her voice was tight. But you need to prove you deserve a place in my life. That's going to require more than pretty words. William nodded, a flicker of determination in his eyes. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes, he said softly. Thank you, Aaliyah, for giving me even the slightest chance. They sat side by side for a few moments longer, watching the water dance. The quiet between them was a tapestry of heartbreak, regret, and just maybe a glimmer of cautious hope. In the weeks after learning the truth, Aaliyah kept her distance from William, but he respected her space. He called occasionally, never pushing, only checking in. When he offered to pay for her tuition, she declined at first, wanting to remain independent. Still, the burden of bills and late-night shifts weighed heavily. Gradually, Aaliyah agreed to meet for quiet dinners, where they began to talk not just about the past, but about dreams and regrets. She spoke of her desire to finish her business degree and one day open a boutique inspired by her mother's passion for design. William listened often, silently, sometimes sharing stories of his strict upbringing under Winston Hawthorne's shadow. For the first time, Aaliyah saw a vulnerable side of the man she'd once only seen as distant and powerful. Though trust was still fragile, the conversations planted something new between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something real. Just when Aaliyah and William were beginning to inch toward a fragile bond, a different storm erupted, one that would cast a dark shadow over the Hawthorne name. Yet again, it started with a breaking news segment on local channels. A top executive at Hawthorne Innovations Group was accused of embezzling funds and misappropriating investments from a charitable foundation connected to the company. Journalists ran wild with speculation. Rumors pointed to a sinister underbelly of corruption hidden beneath William's philanthropic veneer. Aaliyah learned of the scandal while watching TV at home. Alarmed, she texted William, "Are you okay? I just heard something about embezzlement at your company." His reply came a few minutes later. "I'll handle it. There are forces at play here. Don't worry." But the uproar only grew. Reporters started digging into old deals, past controversies, and Winston Hawthorne's legacy of strong-arm tactics. Whispers circulated that William might have known about the corruption and chosen to remain silent, protecting the company's stock price. Protesters even gathered outside the Hawthorne Innovations skyscraper, demanding transparency and accountability. Aaliyah's phone blew up with calls and messages from acquaintances who knew of her connection to William. Though many didn't know he was her father, they had seen them around town or at the Ritz-Carlton. She felt cornered, watching the father she had only just discovered become mired in a public scandal that threatened to destroy him. Unable to rest, Aaliyah took a personal day and went to see William at his office. Security was tighter than usual. She had to show ID and sign multiple forms before being escorted up the reception area, buzzed with tension. Staff walked around with hurried, anxious expressions. Inside William's office, Aaliyah found him hunched over piles of documents on his massive desk. He looked worn, dark circles under his eyes. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice strained. "I appreciate it." She swallowed hard. "What's happening?" William rubbed his temple. "One of our senior VPs, Gerald Banks, had been funneling funds from our charitable arm into offshore accounts. I had no clue until an internal whistleblower came forward. Now the media is pinning it on me, claiming I orchestrated the whole scheme. I suspect there are bigger players. Possibly my father's old associates trying to sabotage me." Aaliyah's jaw tightened. "Is it possible Winston set up these deals before he died? Maybe it's a time bomb left behind, or something you inherited unintentionally." William's eyes widened. "I've considered that. My father had complex relationships with shady financiers. It's entirely possible. But the narrative out there is that I'm continuing his legacy of corruption." He exhaled sharply. "I've spent years distancing myself from Winston's reputation, trying to legitimize the business. Now everything could crumble." She stepped closer. "Is there proof of your innocence?" William managed a ghost of a smile. "We're sifting through records, financial statements, emails, everything. We have lawyers, forensic accountants on it. But it's a slow process, and the press is relentless. My board of directors is in panic mode." He paused, looking at her with earnest desperation. "I hate to involve you in this, but if anything surfaces about Patrice or about you, the media might spin it. I don't want you to be hurt." Aaliyah nodded, her emotions roiling. She despised the idea of being used as a tool in the company's damage control, but she couldn't deny that she was worried. "Thanks for the warning. I can handle the press if it comes to that. But is there anything I can do to help you?" A flicker of gratitude warmed William's gaze. "All I ask is that you trust me when I say I did nothing wrong. The rest I'll handle." She studied his face, searching for signs of deceit. Instead, she found exhaustion and raw desperation. "Okay." She relented, though caution still thrummed through her veins. "I'm here if you need me, but be careful." Sure enough, over the next week the scandal escalated. Journalists camped outside Hawthorne, Innovations, sniffing for fresh leads. William was hounded by paparazzi, especially after rumors emerged of a secret daughter. The tabloids speculated that William had fathered a child in some scandalous affair decades ago, linking it to the current financial meltdown. A few tabloids even ran pictures of Aaliyah leaving the Ritz-Carlton, plastering them with sensational headlines. "Mystery waitress tied to Hawthorne scandal." Suddenly, her private life was under siege. Strangers on social media hurled accusations, while her phone rang with unknown numbers. Even at the restaurant, she couldn't escape stares and hushed whispers. Julian, concerned for the restaurant's reputation, quietly suggested she take some time off. It stung, as though she was being ostracized for circumstances beyond her control. One evening, while barricaded in her apartment, Aaliyah scrolled through a news site featuring a scathing article that implicated William in deep-rooted corruption. They suggested the illegitimate child was part of a hush-money arrangement, fueling more speculation. Anxiety twisted her stomach. Her hand shook as she realized her mother's memory was being dragged through the mud insinuations that Patrice might have exploited William for money. It was all lies, but the public devoured scandal like a favorite meal. Unable to stand it, Aaliyah texted William, "This is getting out of hand. We need to address this. My mother deserves better." "I deserve better," he quickly replied. "I'm organizing a press conference to clear the air." "I'd like you by my side if you can handle it," she hesitated. Standing in front of cameras, admitting to the world that William Hawthorne was her father. She'd spent her life out of the spotlight, and now she risked being forever associated with a scandal. Yet part of her recognized this was about more than just herself. It was about defending her mother's honor. "I'll do it," she texted. "But we do this on our terms, under a crisp autumn sky." A small army of reporters assembled in front of Hawthorne Innovations. A makeshift platform had been erected, a podium with microphones for William's statement. Cameras clicked and whirred as soon as he emerged, dressed in a simple dark suit. He looked uncharacteristically tense. At his side stood Aaliyah in a modest black dress, her chin lifted defiantly. William began clearing his throat. "Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I'm here to address the ongoing investigation into financial misconduct within Hawthorne Innovations Group. As CEO, I take full responsibility for ensuring transparency, and I've enlisted the help of independent auditors and law enforcement to examine all relevant transactions. We will hold anyone involved accountable, no matter their position." He paused, taking a breath before continuing. "I also need to address a personal matter. There's been speculation about my connection to a young woman, Ms. Aaliyah Daniels, and suggestions that this is part of some cover-up. Let me be clear. Ms. Daniels is my daughter, though I only recently discovered this fact after a paternity test. Any claims that she or her late mother, Patrice Daniels, acted unethically or sought hush money are categorically false." The crowd of journalists erupted with questions, each clamoring for details. William held up a hand, signaling for calm. "I regret the secrecy, but we were only just establishing a relationship after decades of my own ignorance. This has nothing to do with the financial misconduct case. To anyone suggesting we're using Aaliyah to divert attention, let me assure you the investigation into embezzlement is thorough and independent." At this point, a reporter yelled, "Ms. Daniels, can you confirm how you found out you were his daughter?" All eyes pivoted to Aaliyah. Her pulse raced, but she reminded herself that she was speaking for her mother, too. She stepped forward, voice quavering. "At first, I discovered that William had a photograph of my mother, Patrice Daniels, who died when I was 13. Through a series of conversations and a DNA test, it was confirmed he's my biological father. That's the entire story. Anyone claiming otherwise is lying." Her heart pounded at the barrage of follow-up questions. One reporter demanded, "Are you receiving money or special treatment from Mr. Hawthorne?" Aaliyah's eyes flashed with anger. "No," she stated firmly. "I've supported myself all my life. This is not a financial arrangement or a plot to shield wrongdoing." Another journalist jumped in. "How do you respond to allegations that your father's company has been involved in unethical practices for years?" William responded solemnly. "I've been CEO for 6 years. Any wrongdoing discovered will be prosecuted, and we're fully cooperating with authorities. I won't make excuses for actions taken by corrupt individuals, whether or not they had ties to my late father, Winston Hawthorne." The crowd continued to press questions, but after a few more statements, reiterating innocence and the ongoing internal investigation, William thanked the media and led Aaliyah off the stage. Though the press conference was chaotic, a sense of relief washed over her. She had stood up for her mother's memory and refused to let lies overshadow the truth. Over the following weeks, the forensic accountants uncovered a labyrinth of fraudulent accounts linked to Winston Hawthorne's old associates. Gerald Banks was arrested, indicted for embezzlement, along with several other accomplices. Meanwhile, the press began to shift its narrative painting, William as a man struggling under the dark legacy left by his father. He was shown to be actively working with law enforcement to expose wrongdoing. Stocks began to stabilize. However, Karma's balance sheet wasn't done. News broke that Winston Hawthorne, years before his death, had engaged in predatory lending and forced evictions in low-income Chicago neighborhoods. The revelation inflamed public outrage. Former tenants and community leaders stepped forward with harrowing stories of intimidation and underhanded practices that left families homeless. It was Winston's ultimate legacy oppression, disguised as business. Though Winston was no longer alive to face the music. The Hawthorne name took a beating. Corporate sponsors pulled back. Politicians who once praised the Hawthorne Philanthropic Fund now distanced themselves. The next blow came when the city council began to debate whether to rename a public building that Winston had heavily financed. His philanthropic gestures were being re-evaluated as mere attempts to launder his reputation. In the midst of this, William faced a moral reckoning. At a board meeting, he proposed creating a restitution fund for families victimized by his father's predatory lending. Many board members balked. It would mean a massive payout and potential admission of liability. But William stood firm, ignoring the potential financial losses. The board ultimately agreed, under threat of William's resignation, to establish the fund. Press coverage indicated that William was making real amends. Though cynics labeled it a PR stunt, Aaliyah watched from the sidelines, torn between empathy for William's predicament and bitterness that Hawthorne money had thrived on people's suffering, possibly even people who looked like her and her neighbors on the South Side. Wanting to honor her mother and set the record straight, Aaliyah reached out to journalist Mia Johnson from the Chicago Tribune. She shared Patrice's letters diary and the story of her forced separation from William due to Winston Hawthorne's threats. Mia wrote a heartfelt feature titled "The Woman Behind the Hawthorne Legacy," portraying Patrice as a dreamer, silenced by power and prejudice. The piece highlighted Aaliyah's journey and William's effort to make amends. Public reaction was swift and supportive. Strangers messaged Aaliyah with praise. The media narrative shifted from scandal to sympathy. For Aaliyah, the article wasn't just vindication, it was justice. Her mother was no longer a rumor in the background of someone else's legacy. She was seen remembered and finally honored for the strength and sacrifice she carried alone. In the aftermath of the article, William invited Aaliyah to a small memorial event he planned for Patrice. He had quietly arranged for a plaque to be placed on a bench overlooking Lake Michigan, near the spot where Patrice once liked to sketch fashion designs. He had discovered it from the diary passages, referencing a peaceful lakeside retreat. The day of the unveiling was crisp and sunny. A small gathering formed a few of William's trusted colleagues, Aaliyah's close friend from the Ritz-Carlton, and Mia Johnson. A brass plaque read, "In loving memory of Patrice Daniels, a dreamer, a creator and a beloved mother, whose spirit lives on in the hearts she touched." Aaliyah's tears flowed freely as William gently placed a bouquet of white lilies at the base of the bench. "I wish I could have done this years ago," he murmured, voice heavy with regret. "But I hope it's not too late to honor her now." Aaliyah sniffled, looking at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means a lot." William turned to her, a seriousness in his gaze. "Aaliyah, for what it's worth, I will never stop trying to do right by you, and by Patrice's memory. Whatever path you choose, if you want to keep me at arm's length, or you want me involved in your life, I'll respect it." He took a shaky breath. "But I'd be honored if you'd consider letting me help with your education or your dreams of a boutique. Not as a bribe, but as what a father should do." A lump formed in Aaliyah's throat. She recalled nights spent worrying over student loans, the heartbreak of nearly dropping out of school due to financial strain. Her mother's dream was always in the back of her mind, a place where fashion and art melded into something beautiful for the world. Maybe this was her chance to make that happen. "I want to finish my degree," she said quietly. "And after that, I want to open a small boutique in my neighborhood, focusing on local designers. It's not some big, money-making plan, but it's important to me. If you really want to help, then help me build something in Mum's memory. Something good for the community to balance what your father stole." William's eyes lit up with cautious hope. "I'd love that," he said, voice cracking. "It would be an honor." With the worst of the scandal behind them, Aaliyah returned to work at the Ritz-Carlton. This time, her co-workers and regular patrons treated her with a newfound respect. The whispers had faded, replaced by warm smiles and quiet admiration for how she'd handled the storm. She juggled her shifts with college classes, determined to finish her business degree. William supported her quietly, offering help only when she asked. More importantly, they worked together on a new initiative, a Hawthorne Innovations program supporting underrepresented fashion designers, honoring Patrice's forgotten dream. Their relationship was far from perfect, but it was evolving. William invited Aaliyah into parts of his world, from charity events to board meetings, not to show off but to include her, to listen. Each day, Aaliyah found herself balancing who she had always been with who she was becoming, not just a waitress or a daughter, but a woman shaping her own legacy. 1 year later, Aaliyah stood in front of her new boutique, Patrice's dream, nestled on a lively street in Chicago's South Side. It was small, vibrant, and filled with designs from local artists and creators inspired by her mother's legacy. The grand opening was modest, but joyful. Neighbors, friends, and community members came to celebrate. William arrived later carrying sunflowers, Aaliyah's favorite, and stood proudly in the background as she cut the ribbon. As cameras flashed and applause filled the air, Aaliyah smiled, not for show, but from deep within. The boutique wasn't just a business. It was a tribute, a promise fulfilled, and a bridge between past pain and future possibility. In William's eyes, she saw pride. In the crowd, she felt community. And in herself, she finally saw someone strong, capable, and free. Months after the boutique opened, Aaliyah sat quietly on the lakeside bench, dedicated to her mother. Fresh lilies rested at its base. She whispered into the breeze, "I hope you're proud, Mum." Life hadn't turned out like a fairy tale, but something better had taken root. Truth, healing, and purpose. Her bond with William was still a work in progress, but it was real. He showed up not with grand gestures, but with steady support. Respect and effort. Aaliyah had found more than a father. She had found her voice, her calling, and a way to honor Patrice's memory, not through revenge or regret, but through creation and community. As the wind stirred gently around her, Aaliyah smiled. The past still echoed, but it no longer defined her. She was no longer lost in her mother's shadow. She was walking in her light. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of secrets, heartbreak, and ultimate redemption. Aaliyah's story is a testament to the power of resilience, proof that our darkest moments can ignite hope and transformation in ways we never expected. If this tale touched your heart, we invite you to help us keep the conversation going. Please like this video to support our storytelling. Share it with friends who love a powerful drama, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories that explore the hidden truths of life. Your engagement fuels our commitment to bringing you tales that inspire, heal, and uplift. Remember, no matter how tangled the past, there's always room for growth and reconciliation. We hope you leave here feeling empowered to uncover truths, mend broken bonds, and above all, believe in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for watching.